Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. I think we're going to hear from somebody new today. Is that right, Mr. Millett?
That is right, Mr. Chairman. We're going to call Jason Oliff now to give evidence.
Good. Thank you. Yes, right, would you like to take the...
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oliff. Good morning. We'd like to sit down and make yourself comfortable. A rather intimidating range of folders in front of you, but Council will take you to the bits that are needed, and documents should be shown up on the screen next to you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Yes. Mr. Oliff, thank you very much for coming. Could you please give the inquiry your full name?
My name's Jason Oliff.
And can I say, first of all, thank you very much for coming to give evidence? No.
Is that better?
That may be. Just a momentary pause, I think, while we sort out the audio. Right.
Is that better?
That's much better, thank you. Can I just say, first of all, thank you very much for coming to give evidence today and assisting us with our investigations. It is very much appreciated. My questions are supposed to be short and simple. If they turn out not to be, or you don't understand a question I've asked you because I've asked it badly or something like that, just ask me to repeat the question or put it in a different way, and I will do. If at any time you want to have a break, we can have a break. No problem with that. Just say I want to have a break and we will stop.
Okay.
Okay. And there's water on your right. There's also a screen on your right on the desk which will display any document or any part of your witness statement that we're going to go to.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask you then, first of all, about your statement, which you should find in a little blue file in front of you at tab A or on the screen. Now, it's dated the 21st of February 2018. Have you read it recently?
Yes.
You have. Can you confirm that its contents are true and accurate?
Yes.
Have you discussed your statement or the evidence that you're going to give today with anybody before coming here?
No.
No. Now, also exhibited to your statement are a number of exhibits, JAO 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. I'm just going to read their numbers into the record. Your statement is MET 000-12791, and your contemporaneous notes at JAO 2 are MET 000-16911. JAO 3 is MET 000-16909. The first whiteboard photograph at JAO 4 is MET 000-16912. Your second whiteboard photograph is MET 000-16906. There's a handwritten list of flats and occupants at MET 000-16909. That's JAO 6. JAO 7 is a phone bill, a personal phone bill of yours, MET 000-16910.
Yeah, it's not a personal mobile. That's a London Fire Brigade mobile phone.
Right. But it's your own, as it were.
Yes, personal issue.
It's a brigade issue, but issue to you personally.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll look at that. Now, in terms of your career, if I can start with that, you joined the London Fire Brigade in 1990, didn't you?
That's correct.
And have you served actively as a firefighter since then?
Yes.
And you've worked, I think, at numerous London fire stations.
Yes.
Could you just list them for us, please?
I started off at Ilford Fire Station. From there, I started doing some temporary acting up to leading firefighter. I've done Shoreditch, Bethnal Green, Bow. I was promoted to leading firefighter at Bow. From there I moved to Barking, White Watch, where I was promoted to sub-officer. And then when we went to rank to roll, I was then compulsory moved as a watch manager A to Silvertown Fire Station. And then I've done a number of temporary roles as a watch manager B to Leighton and East Ham. I was then promoted into our fire safety department. From there, after spending a spell in there, I was transferred to Barking, back to Barking Greenwatch, where I was there for 7 years before I went for promotion. Started doing temporary promotion to station manager until I was finally promoted, where I was to Chiswick and Felton, and to where I'm now, been transferred back over to Homerton.
Right. Can I just ask you to pull the microphone just a little bit closer to you so we can hear you just a bit better?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think you became a station manager in October 2016, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Right. So on the night of the Grenfell Tower fire, 13th, 14th June 2017, what was your rank at the LFB?
That was, I was a station manager on development.
Right. On development?
Yes.
Right.
When you're initially promoted, you have to complete like a development period to show that you're competent to be able to carry out that role.
Okay. And after Grenfell, when did you cease being in development and assume the full role of station manager?
That was on the 17th of May this year.
Right. Now, your work as a firefighter, at what point did it involve work in the Brigade control room? When did you switch to that?
When I was initially promoted to station manager, I was informed that one of the tags that I would have to take on would be Officer of the Day tag, and that involved working at Merton Control and liaising with our Resource Management Centre and the control staff and Officer Watch.
Right. You say one of the tags that I would have to take on would be Officer of the Day tag. What is the tag? What's a tag?
A tag is a specialist role that a senior officer for the London Fire Brigade has to take on. As a station manager, they're supposed to have a minimum of 2 specialist tags. Obviously, there's different roles across. So you could be like a tactical advisor, rescue, bulk media advisor, officer of the day. There's numerous roles.
Right. And Officer of the Day is one that takes you into the control room, is it?
It is, yes.
Right. Okay. And can you choose which tags to take on, or are they distributed to you?
With regards to the Officer of the Day tag, that is it's a compulsory tag that station managers are required to take on.
Really? Okay. And so is it the case that every officer of the London Fire Brigade who is promoted to SN, station manager?
It never used to be, but the year that I was promoted, because I think there was a shortage of people with that particular tag, they made it a compulsory tag that officers take on. It gives you an overview of how the London Fire Brigades run as well.
Right.
So,
okay. And in general terms, what is the balance of activities, the sharing of activities between active frontline firefighting and control room activity that a station manager, any station manager in London, would undertake?
When you refer to actually active involvement with being at control, it's only whilst you're Officer of the Day. So there is a rota that you're put on where you'll be Officer of the Day for. It can be anything. It's normally around about every 4 weeks you'll cover the role of Officer of the Day 1, and then in between that you'll be given additional Officer of the Day 2 duties. Right.
And how much time do you spend as Officer of the Day? How long is an Officer of the Day?
It's normally a 24. When you're on a 24-hour protocol.
Right. So would it be the case that every station manager in active service in London would expect to be given 24 hours in the control room every 4 weeks?
Well, you're not there for 24 hours. Initially, you report there at 8 o'clock in the morning. You liaise with the Resource Management Centre coordinator and the Officer of the Watch for control. You get an overview of the resources that are available for the London Fire Brigade at that time, personnel, appliances, what incidents have happened the night before, what incidents are going on at that particular time. There's a certain amount of duties that you carry out during the morning period. Part of that will include an appliance off the run report that gets forwarded to principal managers. Once you've completed those duties, then you can leave control. So you normally end up leaving control for around about midday.
Right. Okay.
And then from that time you resume your operational role as well, so you're available by pager. So if you're the nearest station manager to a particular large incident, you can still get mobilised to it.
Yes, I see. Okay. And on average, within that 24-hour on-call slot for the control room, how often would you actually have to go into the control room and see it in operation?
So, as officer of the day, if a significant incident occurs, if there's 6 fire appliances attending an incident, you'll be paged so that you can monitor it. If that incident then progresses to 8 fire appliances, then you have to mobilise to the control. So you book, we call it booking status 2. So we mobilise with blue lights and sirens to get there, so that we liaise with the officer to watch, the control staff and the operational side.
I see, okay. So just in general terms, would it be the case then that any station manager, and indeed any station manager who attended the Grenfell Tower fire on the night, would have a significant degree of experience of how the operations, how the Brigade Control Centre worked? It's
a bit difficult to answer that, because not everybody who was promoted before I would have the officer of the day tag.
I see. Yes, you
so there are senior officers out there, there are station managers out there who haven't got the officer of the day tag, so they wouldn't have an overview of what those roles and duties would require.
Okay. Can I just explore that a bit more? When did the officer of the day tag come in, as it were, automatically for station managers?
The year that I got promoted, I was told from that point on, because they had a shortage of officers of the day tags, that the London Fire Brigade was looking at any person that was promoted from that time would take that role on.
Okay, so it wasn't retrospective in respect of people who were station managers before that?
No, there were station managers before who had the officer of the day tag, but I can't say whether all station managers. Well, I know all station managers never had the officer of the day tag.
Right. Do you know why London Fire Brigade brought in the new officer of the day tag policy for new station managers?
I think it was just the fact that they had a shortage of station managers applying to take that role on.
I see. Okay. And prior to the fire, 14th of June 2017, do you know how many times you had been officer of the day?
That was the first time that I was officer of the day.
That night?
That night, yeah, that day. I started officer of the day duty at 0800 hours on the 13th.
Right. Now, can I just ask you to look at your statement and look at page 2? Can I ask you to go to the middle of page 2?
Oh, sorry.
Have we got some tissues, please?
Sorry, something.
Oh, right.
We've got some there. Right. We'll just have a little pause
Mr.
while you
Chairman,
move up.
Behind your screen, there is a great wad.
Yeah, and much
tissues.
more useful. We're going to find this more useful.
Oh, lovely.
You don't need to worry, Mr. Oliff. It's a well-known hazard for witnesses and counsel, that one. So get yourself organised and then we'll go on.
I was going to say, you've beaten me to it. Mr. Oliff, when you're ready, are you okay to go on?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Can I just ask you to look at your statement in the middle of page 2? And as I said, best to look at it on the screen on your right if that's not inconvenient. You say, my shift began at 800 hours and was a 24-hour duty. Under normal circumstances, I would have attended Merton on this day, as this would have been where the control centre was based. However, Merton was closed for repairs, and as such, I attended Stratford, which is the Brigade's Fallback mobilising control centre. Now,
when I said it was closed, Merton wasn't actually closed. They was carrying out updates and upgrades on the computer servers at Merton. So whilst they're doing that, they transfer it to the fallback control, which is at Stratford.
Now, this, as you told us, was your first time you had attended or been in the role of officer of the day. Does that mean that this was the first time you'd attended Stratford?
Having worked pretty much most of my career in the North East area, I've been to Stratford quite a few times. I've seen the fallback control at Stratford before.
Was this the first time you had attended it in the capacity of Officer of the Day?
Yes.
Right. And on the previous occasions you'd attended it, did you have to undertake any operational roles?
No.
Right. So what would you be doing there?
What, before?
Yes.
Before they're just familiarisation visits,
right?
Just to show what the capabilities are.
Okay, right. And before your attendance on the night of the 14th of June, were you familiar with the individual officers in control of the operation?
No, I mean control is very similar to a fire station where they've got I think it's 4 or 5 different watches. There's quite a large number of staff, so and again, as a new officer today, I wasn't particularly familiar with the control staff or the officer of the watch.
Had you worked with Joe Smith before?
I hadn't, no.
What about Adrian Fenton?
I've worked with Adrian before, yeah, so because he's operational principal manager. I've worked with him at lower levels before he was promoted to.
Okay. What about Alex Norman?
No.
Had you worked with her before?
No.
Okay. Now, do you know when Merton closed for repairs and the operation of control moved to Stratford?
Yeah, it was swapped over that morning.
That morning?
Yeah, the 13th.
And do you know how long it was envisaged that Merton would be closed for?
No, I didn't. I wasn't.
And to your experience, in your experience, was there any difference between the Merton and Stratford control rooms in terms of functionality or capabilities?
Stratford is a slightly smaller room, but it has the same capabilities as what Merton has.
Right. Now, if we move to page 3 of your statement, just below halfway down, you say at 01:25 I received another pager alert. I think, in fact, you'd received one earlier. Is that right, in relation to Grenfell?
No, that was the 01:25 was the first pager message. When I referred to receiving another pager message, as Officer of the Day, you carry out a number of duties with regard to personnel issues, resources within the Fire Brigade that you deal with and liaise with Resource Management Centre.
Right.
That particular day was a very, very busy day, Officer of the Day wise. But that was 01:25 was the first page message that I had with regards to Grenfell.
And you say you were told it was a page alert to an 8-pump fire.
That's correct.
In fact, at that stage, it had gone to a 10-pump fire. Did you know that?
I didn't at that time. I say my initial pager message that came across, and I think there was I'm not sure whether I'd taken a photograph of the actual initial pager message that I sent. It was just informing me of an 8-pump fire at Grenfell. With regards to our pager system, sometimes the pager messages are slightly delayed. So the initial pager message that could have come out, by the time it had gone 10, it could have changed quite quickly.
Right. Okay, it's hard to tell from the photograph, but could you just turn to, or be shown, your second exhibit, JA02, at MET 000016911.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I can't hear you.
Sorry, it's actually for the Documents Director. We'll bring it up on the screen. That's JA02, your second exhibit. Now, it's difficult to read it, but we may just try and do our best. If you could just be shown in magnified form what's in the window of the pager. Is this, I should ask, is this a photograph of your pager?
Yes.
At the moment you got the call?
That's the pager message that I received to informing me there was an 8-pump fire. We was attending and it says at the top, for your information, we're attending an 8-pump fire on Alpha 43's ground, and then they give you the incident number.
Right. Okay. And is there come on, tell the time on that.
There is a second picture of a pager which has the date and time, and I believe
that's MET 000016908, Mr. Documents Director, I think, which is JA03. Would that be it?
That's correct.
125.
Yeah, that's the second part. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll see an up and down. They're like a scroll. So the first part of the message would have been up, and then you scroll down, and that bit comes up underneath.
Yes. And can I just ask you, that photograph, was that taken at the time you were paged or afterwards?
That was afterwards. That was I believe that was in the morning at Stratford, because as you can see the white notepad that's underneath it.
Yes. Okay. So the pager records, does it, the message?
It does, yes.
And keeps it retains it on it?
Yeah, until it gets deleted.
As I say, in fact, it had just gone 10 at that stage, but you didn't know that?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. You then say in your statement that, this is 3 lines down from it, I telephoned the control centre immediately after receiving the page alert. It could only have been 30 seconds to a minute between the 2 events. I was informed on the telephone that the fire was on A43's ground and was now a 15-pump fire. I remember thinking this was growing very quickly. I showed myself status 2 with the control. Now, what did you think was happening with that speed of makeup like that?
Normally with that, when an incident progresses that quickly, we've got quite a seriously developed fire in a premises. You try to make a mental picture of possibly what is going on. At that particular time, I just thought it's a very large incident. We're going to need a lot of resources there, and it's going to need quite a lot of strategic coordination with regards to control and the incident ground.
Right. Can I just turn then to a slightly separate subject before coming back to the night itself, and that's the question of training. Now, as officer of the day, going to the control centre, you were going in, is this right, to take responsibility for the control and handling of fire survival guidance calls and other calls coming in?
No. When you get paged to an 8-pump fire, you go to control, and part of your duties is to liaise with the officer of the watch and the control staff, and you act as an assistant or advisor to the operational side and the control side. So you may have to assist the control staff doing particular duties, or you may just liaise with the operation of the fire ground and control with regard to different issues.
Okay. Just in terms of advisor to the control staff?
Yeah, that's to do with the operational side. So they may be dealing with stuff and they might question you regarding operational procedures and stuff like that. We may also assist with stuff like relief plans and gathering information. We used to, at that particular time, part of the duties of the day is to get what was called a headline board up and running. So you'd have a whiteboard where you put the incident number, the address, the last informative message, who the officer in charge was, etc., stuff like that.
Right. Let's just take it a little bit more slowly. First of all, you mentioned assisting with stuff like relief plans.
Yeah.
What do you mean by relief plan?
When we have a large incident, obviously firefighters that are out on the incident ground work extremely hard. So the London Fire Brigade has a policy in place where after 4 hours on the fire ground, fire crews are normally relieved with fresh crews from other stations, so they'll draw fresh crews from further away to come in and relieve the crews that are actually on the incident ground, so that we've got a constant crews attending the incidents.
Yes, I see. Okay. And does part of your function and responsibility involve assisting control room operators or operations managers with what advice to give callers?
Not normally, no.
Does any part of your, or does it follow from that does any part of your function involve assessing or assisting operations managers to assess when a call goes from being an ordinary 999 call, as it were, to a fire survival guidance call?
No, the control staff make that decision whether it's a fire survival guidance call.
Right.
They've had the specific training to deal with that.
And have you had specific training to deal with that?
Not taking a 999 call as a fire survival guidance, no.
Were you ever at the time of the night of the fire, had you had training on policy 790, fire survival guidance calls?
I've read the policy numerous times because it was part of the promotion process to station manager. You have to have an overview, a very, very good knowledge of a number of the fire brigade policies, and I've read that a number of times. As a watch manager, part of my role as a watch manager, when I was a watch manager, was to give training sessions, knowledge training sessions to my firefighters in those particular policies, so that should fire survival guidance call come in whilst you was attending an operational incident, those firefighters would know what the procedures were.
Okay, and we'll come back to 790 in due course, but what about policy 539?
Just remind me which one that is, sorry.
Yes, policy 539 is emergency call management.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have had training in that because that's to do with control staff. It's not to do with the operational side.
Right. Okay. And what about? Would the same apply to what Ms. Smith last week called the RIFs, the fire survival guidance operator and fire survival guidance supervisor?
No, because that,
again,
that's specific to control operator staff.
Okay. And would you have had training or be familiar with the national guidance, the generic risk assessment published by the Department for Communities and Local Government in February 2014?
Can you repeat the question, sorry?
I think the answer may be no, but I'll try it anyway. Were you familiar with the national guidance for high-rise buildings, fire in high-rise buildings, GRA, or Generic Risk Assessment 3.2, published by the Department of Communities and Local Government?
I'm aware of the national guidelines regarding fire survival guidance stay put policy, but with the actual policy you're staying no.
Okay, you're aware, you're familiar with the national principles at least,
yes,
if not the document.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of training, you say you were aware and had read policy 790 as part of your promotion to station manager. Was there any specific training on how to implement what the policy requires?
As from the operational side of it, where you're receiving fire survival guidance information from control, yes. From the control side of it, I would say no.
No. Okay. Can I just explore this just a little bit? If you go to policy 790, which is tab 5 of the policies bundle, I'd like you to look at section 9. We'll come back to this in due course in relation to specifics, but just in general terms, it's page 5 internally. And if section 9 could just be highlighted, this is communication with control. And just looking at it, this is part of 790. Can we take it that you're familiar with this?
Yes.
Yeah. And looking at paragraph 9.1, it says, it is vital that control is kept informed of the actions being taken to resolve each FSG call. The fact that control is aware of the actions being carried out on the incident ground will greatly enhance the advice given to FSG callers. And then the third one, well, let me stick with that one for the moment. Did you ever get specific training on how control can keep itself informed of the actions being taken to resolve each FSG call?
Normally, the training and the policy states that once the fire survival guidance information has been passed to the operational or the fire ground, that any information. So if this fire survival guidance has been passed and crews have then been allocated to go and deal with that fire survival guidance, that information is normally fed back via the main scheme radio to control, so that if control are still on the phone to those people, then they can inform them that firefighters are on their way to rescue or to deal with the situation.
Right. So, okay. You say the information is normally fed back via the main scheme radio to control. Just pausing there. Is that something you were trained in? That the method of the fireground passing the information back to control?
All firefighters receive a certain amount of training with regards to using the main scheme radio. Normally at significant incidents, we'd have a incident command pump set up where there would be a incident command operator. A firefighter or a junior officer would be allocated to be in charge of the incident command pump, and information would then be passed via the incident command pump to control.
Via the main scheme radio?
Right, via the main scheme radio.
On the command pump?
On the incident command pump, or the at an initial attendance, an incident command pump is normally set up as, or one of the fire engines, one of the fire appliances is set up as an initial command pump. So that's your first level of command and control, so that you have a radio link between the fireground and the control room.
Right. Is what you're telling us something that has come to you through your own personal experience, or has it come to you through training?
That's come through training. There is a policy on setting up incident command pump, which firefighters are trained in. Right.
Have you got personal experience, or had you had personal experience, as at the night of the Grenfell Tower fire, of the incident ground passing back to control the actions being taken to resolve a fire survival guidance
As
call?
a watch manager, I have been on the other side of the operational ground where we've received fire survival guidance, and we've dealt with the incident and sent informative messages back to control to say what actions were taken, yes.
You say sent informative messages back to control. Yeah. Is that the way that it would be done?
Yes, yeah. So with regards to the main scheme radio, there's a number of different types of messages we would send. So if the first one may be a priority message where we request additional resources, then we send an informative message to give an overview of the type of incident. Depending on how long the incident actually lasts, there may be more than one type of informative message. Then at the end of the incident, once we've sort of had the incident under control, we could do a fire surrounding or a stop message for that particular type of incident.
Right. But would an informative message always provide tailor-made and specific information about what was happening on the fireground to resolve the FSG call?
That is part of the fire survival guidance policy, that once the fire survival guidance information has been passed to the fireground and that crews have been allocated to deal with that information, then there should be an informative sent back to control to inform them to say what actions are being taken. Right. Sometimes that informative message may be the fact that fire crews have ascended to whatever particular floor and the number of people have then been rescued from that floor, so that they know that the fire survival guidance information has been dealt with.
Would, in your experience or training, would the informative message being passed back from the fireground to control always accurately, or reasonably accurately, provide control with enough information to be able to advise the caller as to whether or not it was safe to try to use the emergency exit?
Are you saying that sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. Would the informative message coming back from the fireground to control always be accurate enough to be able to help the CRO advise the caller as to whether it was safe to use the escape route?
That information could be sent back, yes.
But would an informative message do the job, or would you need something a bit more tailor-made?
Normally on the fireground, unless a command unit is in process, the only means of actually communicating with control is via main scheme radio. So any information that would be passed back would be via the main scheme radio. From my own personal experiences, advice from the fire ground regarding escape routes has never been passed back, because normally fire crews are sent to deal with people that have come under the fire survival guidance issues.
Right. Okay. And looking back at the policy, the second sentence of 9.1 says the fact that control is aware of the actions being carried out on the incident ground will greatly enhance the advice given to FSG callers. Were you aware of the desirability of having the incident ground provide you in the control room with the actions being carried out on the incident ground?
Are you talking about on the particular night?
On the night.
On the night of the incident, we were receiving so many fire survival guidance calls. Normally the fire survival guidance information comes via the main scheme radio. The call operators were inundated with radio traffic and phone calls from people within the tower block. And I was actually passing the information via my mobile phone from the control room to the command unit, and I did receive, I wouldn't say I received specific information regarding every individual fire survival guidance call, but I did receive some information back regarding some of the fire survival guidance calls that had been issued. I think there's some.
Okay, we'll come to that then in due course. But in general terms, and ignoring Grenfell itself, in your training, you were aware, were you, of the desirability of control, knowing as much as possible as to what was happening on the incident ground?
Yes, yeah, because then that information, if we've got people that are trapped in their property, whether it be a flat or a house, control can then pass that information to the occupants that are trapped to let them know that fire crews are on their way. They're aware of where they are, they know where they are, and that the crews are on their way to rescue them.
Right. Is there any other way of the fireground communicating with control other than by the use of informative messages? In general terms? On larger incidents, there would be a command unit. On the command unit, they have a telephone number which is logged into their telephone, which is a critical life information line, which is a priority telephone line that goes straight through to control. There's a red telephone at the head table. If the command units use that telephone line, it's like a priority line, and the officer of watch can answer it, so they can get specific critical life information directly from the command unit. And looking at paragraph 9.3 of the policy, the outcome of every FSG call must be communicated to control. Again, would that be done by informative message normally, or would it normally be done by the...
Depending on the size of the incident, that could be via the main scheme radio or via telephone line via the command unit.
And when it says outcome of every FSG call, what does that mean?
That means if the fire survival guidance call has been dealt with, so fire crews have gone up and rescued the occupants.
Right. Okay. And what if, just in general terms, what if the outcome of a call is that at the moment the crew is unable to reach the caller who is trapped?
I've not been put in that, with the exception of what happened on that night. I've never been put in that situation. I've never heard of that situation occurring. Fire crews have always been sent to deal with fire survival guidance calls, and depending on the outcome, whether they've rescued them or whether unfortunately people lost their lives, I've never known that information being passed back saying that we cannot get to them.
Right. Okay. In training terms, did you have any training after Lacknell House on the lessons learnt from Lacknell House?
Yes, there was a case study that was circulated that fire crews were taken through.
Right. And do you remember when you were shown that case study?
I don't know. I mean, it's a long time ago.
Okay. Right. Can I ask you to look at, well, first of all, are you familiar with an LFB report on the lessons learned and conclusions to be drawn from the Lacknell House fire?
I probably haven't read the report, no.
You wouldn't have read it?
No.
Let me just show it to you and
Okay.
just see if it's familiar. And if you haven't read it, then I would ask you about it. That's the first page. I was going to ask you about some specific paragraphs, particularly paragraphs 293 to 296. Which are on page let's see if we can get those. 50. Internal, yes, 50. Just looking at them, Mr. Oliff, I don't want to spend time on this if you're not familiar with the report, but just looking at paragraph 293, expectations that callers will be rescued and stay put advice. Just looking at that briefly, is that something you've seen before in this form? Have you seen this report or a report like it on this subject?
Yeah, I haven't read that report, but that is in part of other policies as part of the advice, the expectations of what control staff would be giving to people who are in fire survival guidance. There's like 4 concepts.
Okay. Just looking at that then, I know you haven't seen this before, but do you think you got training either in approaching station manager status or before that on the matters that are covered by that paragraph?
Training with respect to...
in respect to anything covered by that paragraph. But let me put it more specifically. In the third line, it says, as rescued by crews were not immediate, there is a question whether the CO and or callers could have assessed the risk of attempting to escape from the flat and whether the risk of moving closer to the fire but escaping was less than staying put and awaiting rescue. COs relied on advising callers to stay put, expecting that this would keep callers safe from the fire. And my question is, did you ever, after Lacknell House, get any training on that question, on the problems that arise from COs relying on callers?
I think the CO refers to the call operator, which is not part of the operational side of the firefighter training.
Okay, and then looking at 296, which is about communication between the control and incident command, it says there is evidence of information passing from control to the incident ground, and only one occasion when details of a flat with people trapped were not passed in a timely way. Control supervisors regularly try to obtain information about the progress with the incident, particularly in relation to callers being given FSG. In line with the practice at the time, there was much less information being passed from the incident ground to control about the progress of firefighting and rescue efforts. It's not clear if COs have been given information about progress that it would have influenced the advice given to callers. So the lesson learnt there seems to be that the incident ground wasn't passing enough information back to control to be able to assist them with their calls. Did you, after Lacknell House, get any specific training on how to improve communications between the fire ground and the control room so as to be able to help control room?
The fire survival guidance policy was brought out and crews were trained in that. As a watch manager, we gave crews knowledge sessions with regards to the importance of passing information backwards to control. But as specifically training-wise, no.
Okay. And you say you gave crews knowledge sessions with regard to the importance?
Yeah, it's training sessions on the actual policy and about the information required that needs to go back to control.
Right. And did you give them training on how specific to be in relation to a specific call? In other words, training them to pass clear and accurate information back to the control room about the actual progress at that moment of a particular...
The information that normally goes back comes from the initial fire survival guidance information. So you'd be given fire survival guidance information for a specific flat number. That information, once the person's rescued, they would go right on the informative message, flat zone, 2 people rescued by BA crews via internal staircase, and that information would then go back.
And how important would it be for the incident ground to have the specific flat number, particularly when you've got a high-rise building?
For the information going to the fire ground, that is very important, because not only just the flat number, the floor number, how many people are involved. Right. For that information to go to the fire ground is imperative, because that information, the sector commander can then allocate crews to go and deal with that particular information.
Yes. Can I now go back to the question of the Stratford control room? On page 8 of your statement, if you put the policies away for the moment, on page 8 of your statement you say the bottom of the page, Merton was closed for repairs at the time, and then it says Merton always has a large screen television switched on, and I believe this is an invaluable tool in decision making when an incident like this is unfolding. Now, why is it invaluable?
The screens at Merton, and they do have a screen at Stratford, is normally one screen is normally on Sky News, and Sky News tends to be first on scene, so you get an overview picture of the type of incident that's going on. There is a second screen which can have I'm led to believe, a downlink from the police helicopter, so a police helicopter can send pictures to the command room or Brigade Coordination Centre, so that the principal manager in the Brigade Coordination Centre can have a view of what's actually going on at the incident. So for personnel that are in the actual so for people that are actually in the control room, you've got a physical picture of the actual incident that's being dealt with.
And you say on page 9 of your statement, I believe that having access to the images of this event as it happened would have assisted us, the LFB, in making assessments from our remote location. Could you just explain how seeing images like that on the television of Grenfell Tower would have assisted the control room?
So from my point of view, I wouldn't have had the authority to change decisions in the control room at that time, but it may have given the officer of the watch or the senior operations manager or the deputy assistant commissioner an overview of the development of the incident, and they may have been able to make an assessment. They may have been able to make an assessment to change the stay put policy.
What would they have been able to see from the television images if the television had been on in the Stratford control room, which would have enabled the senior control room staff to change the stay put policy? They
would have been able to see an overview of the actual incident, how it was progressing, the actions of you wouldn't have to be directly able to see the actions of the firefighters, but you'd been able to see an overview of the actual and how quickly it was developing and how fast the fire was spreading.
What would looking at the television had provided the control room staff with that they couldn't get from direct contact by speaking to the incident commander or the ICP or the CU on the fire ground?
I think it's an old adage of a picture paints 1,000 words. And I think you get an overview by seeing a television screen with a particular scene or whatever. You'd get an overview of what the firefighters and the senior officers that are actually on the incident ground are dealing with.
From your experience, what is the purpose of having a television on in the control room showing a 24-hour news feed?
Again, it gives an overview of specific incidents. So if there's a breaking news story or a serious incident, whether it be fire or police-related or LAS-related incident, you can get an overview of what's going on.
Right. And in your experience of control rooms such as it was, is seeing news feeds of a major developing fire something which does assist control room operators make decisions?
When you're in the control room that night, and again at that particular time I had limited experiences because it was my first time as an officer of the day.
Yes.
And when you're monitoring calls as well and you're listening for information via the mainstream radios, you're trying to formulate a mental picture of the incident and what actions the crews are taking, how the incident is developing, but having a screen up in that control centre, as I said, a picture paints 1,000 words. So it would give everyone in that room an overview of what the London Fire Brigade and the other emergency services were dealing with that night.
Now, Jo Smith, when she came to give evidence last week, said on a few occasions, and just for the transcript, it's day 21, page 95, and day 22 at page 173, just for our purposes. She said, and I paraphrase, that the purpose of having the television on normally would just be background and wouldn't be used as an information gathering tool to enable control room
generally
officers.
that is true, but again this was my comment that I made, that and this is within hindsight of the actual incident taking place, that would have been an invaluable tool to have at that particular time.
Okay. And what do you think, and it's hindsight, and I take your point on that, so there's only so far we can take it, but what would it have given the control room operators? I think you've answered this. It's the general pictorial overview rather than any specific information.
I think for that particular incident, and again it's been said 1,000 times that it was unprecedented, an incident like that has never been seen in London, and I think that would have given an overview of how stretched and how under pressure the emergency services were that night.
Now, in your statement, top of page 9, we were just on it, and I jumped the sentence deliberately, but the sentence before the one I was asking you about says this: when I arrived at Stratford, one of the first things I noticed was that the television was switched off. I was informed that it was broken. Now, you say one of the first things I noticed was that the television was switched off. Was that a thought you had at the time?
Yeah, because as you walk into the Stratford control room, you've got like the head desk is basically straight in front of you, and then the screen is behind it, and it was switched off. And because, as I say, from my own personal experience, any particular major incident, and this was quite clearly going to be one of those type of incident because of the way that the incident was made up very, very quickly, the amount of resources that were requested from the incident ground, that would have been especially for the centre of London, probably a breaking news story in some way, shape or form.
So were you surprised that the television was not on?
I just noticed that it was off, and when I said to, I think it was the officer of the watch, I was just involved, it was broken, it wasn't working.
Right. So the officer of the watch told you it was broken, is that right?
Sorry?
The officer of the watch told you it was broken?
I'm not 100% certain, but I'm sure it was. In saying that, there were other screens. We have at Stratford, there is downstairs where they normally set up the Brigade Coordination Centre, there are another 2 screens, right. But obviously, as officer today, I stayed in the control room, so I didn't have privilege to go down and actually view those screens.
Who was the officer of the watch that night?
I can't remember her name, I'm sorry.
And did you try the television for yourself?
No, I didn't. No. It was immediate as soon as I walked into the control room, it was evident that all the core operators, the head table where the officer watch sits, was inundated with calls and information that was going on. It was a very, very busy control room.
And do you remember whether the television was ever turned on that night? Or did it stay off?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. You mentioned the other screen, and indeed on page 9 you go on to say at Merton there's a link to the helicopter images, which are
there's a facility that they have to be able to do a downlink. It's the same as what they have with our command units,
yeah.
But I can't say whether that was actually put in place on the night. As I say, I didn't get the BCC bit is downstairs underneath the control room. It's in a different room.
Right. Is that the heli-tele link?
Yes.
If I could just ask you to look at the IMP report, which is tab 30 of the documents bundle. This is the incident report, which was published afterwards. If you look at page 2.
Did you say tab 30?
Yes, tab 30. It'll come up on the screen. It's actually on the screen already. It's much easier to look at that.
Okay.
I give tab 30 to Mr. Documents Controller. Otherwise, yeah. So I should just say when I give out a number or a tab, it's for the Documents Controller's benefit. Then he puts it up on the screen, and then we can look at it together. But if you want to look at it in paper form,
that's fine.
That's fine. Okay. If you go to the second page, it says under Development, second entry. There was no access to the helicopter downlink, heli-tele, at Stratford Control Fallback. Review the equipment at our control fallback locations. Now that was what the conclusion of the incident review was. Do you remember that there was no access during the night at Stratford to the heli-tele?
Well, as I say, I mean, I was in the control room all night, and the screen that was behind the head table was I was told was not working, so there was no, in the actual control room itself, I wasn't aware that the screens downstairs, they had no link to that.
Right. Okay. Now, do you remember whether there were any other issues with the Stratford control room's facilities on that night?
Not as far as I'm aware, no. It was just an extremely busy room. Everybody was working flat out.
In the control room, do you normally have, or can you get access to the operational risk database for a building?
You can via. I'm not sure about control. I couldn't say whether you could or couldn't control.
Right.
I know via the command units you can, via the fire appliances that are on the incident grounds that you can. I couldn't say whether you can do it at control or not.
What about the contents of a mobile data terminal for a particular building?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Did you, in your experience, I suppose given this was the first time, this is a slightly stunted question, but did you think on the night that it might be necessary to look at the operational risk database or ask somebody to do so in order to get more information about the tower?
That's normally done on the incident ground. So part of the incident commander's role would be information gathering, and part of that would be to look at the mobile data terminal, either via the command unit or by fire appliance, to gather plans and information regarding the building.
How normally would a control room operator, or indeed the supervisors and operations managers in the control room, know of any given building whether a stay put policy was in place?
Any high-rise building, it normally has a stay put policy in place.
So that would be an assumption that the control room would make?
Yeah, that is national guidelines.
Okay. And how would the control room know about any escape routes or stairs and other active or passive fire prevention measures in any given building?
Control wouldn't.
Control wouldn't?
No, not as far as I'm aware. That sort of information would be on the MDT or the ORD, which the incident commander should be made aware of.
Okay.
So normally at a 6-pump fire and above, part of the officer cadre that would attend that type of incident would be a senior fire safety officer, and part of his role would be to look at plans and look at the fire precautions within a building so that he can advise the incident commander of those facilities within a building.
In your experience, would it be normal then for the control room, whether the CRO handling the call or any of the supervising managers, to know little or nothing about the layout of the building, number of staircases, or any active or passive fire survival or fire prevention?
I would say that's the case probably. I can't be 100% certain, but as far as I'm aware, that information is normally dealt with out on the actual fire ground.
Right.
And so I'm not a control operator, so I've been trading the operational side of it, not the control operational side of it.
So when a control room operator is giving advice to a caller who is feeling the effects of heat, smoke or fire in their flat, how would the control room operator be able to assess the safety for the caller of leaving their flat and utilising the escape route or routes?
That's a question for a call operator. I'm not a call operator. I don't take the 999 calls, so I don't know how they've been trained to carry out that risk assessment to deem where it's safe or not.
If the control room operator and anybody in the control room doesn't have access to the operational risk database or any information about the layout and structure of the building, how can a control room operator give any kind of advice to a caller as to the means of escape?
There's standard information that a call operator would give to a person who was deemed trapped in their flat about surviving within that compartment until fire crews reach them.
Okay, but before that person is actually trapped and can't get out, but is looking at their options, they're affected by smoke, heat or fire in their flat, and there's a discussion going on between the caller and the control room operator about getting out.
The control operator would question...
Can I just ask my question? How can the control room operator give advice if he or she doesn't actually know about what the building contains in terms of escape routes?
I can't answer that question because I say I'm not a control operator. I can only speculate and say that the control operator would question the occupant, because the occupant would know the layout of the building, the occupant would know where the escape routes are, and the layout of the building themselves.
Yes.
And if the occupant of that flat deems that they can't escape from that flat, then the control operator would go to the stay put policy and start giving them advice about how to prevent smoke entering a room, the best place for them to be within their property.
Okay. Mr. Oliff, we've been going for more than an hour, and I'm grateful to you. Mr. Chairman, it may be appropriate to have a break now.
Well, we could have a break now. How are you getting on, Mr. Oliff?
I'm fine, thank you.
And how are you getting on, Mr. Willett?
Fine, I've come to a natural point for a break. We need one.
Well, I was just wondering whether we could go on for another quarter of an hour, a bit more, and then have a longer break. Otherwise, we have 2 breaks.
Yes.
Well, I mean, would that be convenient?
We could go on for a quarter of an hour and then take a big break.
Would you be all right with doing that?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. Yeah.
So we do that, and then we'll have a longer break at somewhere near 11:30.
Come back to it. Yes, let's do that. At page 3 of your statement, just going back to that if I can, Mr. Oliff, we've covered this. You've said you were paged at 1:25, and we've seen your pager. Had you ever heard of Grenfell Tower?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I think you also say that as officer of the day, you would receive an alert in the event of a 6-pump fire.
Normally, yes.
Yeah. And what would you be required to do if you were told it was a 6-pump fire?
If it was a 6-pump fire, I'd probably turn on my radio. I'd monitor what radio traffic was going back between the fire ground and the control room, and I would probably also remote log on to the control system. We've got Boss and Vision that would bring up the incident so that I could see where the incident was and have an overview of the actual incident itself.
And it's a matter of record here that this fire at Grenfell Tower became a 6-pump fire at 1:13. Did you receive, and I think the answer is no, did you receive an alert at...
No.
Do you know why not?
I don't know. I can only speculate and assume that it went from 6 to 8 very, very quickly. By the time it got to our paging, which is part of RML, which is part of the control room staff, it just came straight over as an 8-pump fire.
And you then showed yourself as status 2, you say.
Yeah.
We have, and there's no need to turn it up, but we have you calling in at 1:27:03. Would that be about right?
Yeah, if that's what the records show. I do remember it taking a while for my phone call to be answered.
Yes, and we have a call. It's probably best if I show it to you for completeness. Could you please be shown page 42 of the ORR? This is the first time we've looked at this document. This is a...
We haven't got it yet.
No, we haven't yet. I'm waiting. Before it comes up, I'll tell you what it is. This is a very detailed report put together by the London Fire Brigade, minute by minute, and in parts, second by second, based on information available to them. And a third of the way down page 42, it says at 01:27:03, Station Manager Oliff, who is the nominated Officer of the Day 1, contacts the paging officer to acknowledge receipt of the 8-pump fire. He confirms the controller located at Stratford and states he will proceed to control.
Sorry, can you just confirm the time again?
Yes, 01... I'm so sorry.
Jenny, we're seeing the right page.
We're not on the right page. It's page 42. I'm sorry, I'm busy reading away, not realising
okay.
that it wasn't on your screen. I'm sorry. So there it is, 01:27:03.
Oh, there we are.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, of course,
No,
you also don't have it. And there it says, Station Manager Oliff, nominated Officer of the Day, contacts paging officer, acknowledge receipt of 8-pump fire, and you confirm controller located at Stratford. I think that's the paging officer confirms that controller located at Stratford and states he will proceed to control. And the source of that is an admin call. Can you help with what an admin call is?
That's just where an officer calls via their mobile phone to control paging.
Right, so this message, did it go over your brigade mobile?
Yes.
Okay. And in your experience, are the brigade mobile calls recorded?
I'm not sure. I'm not aware.
Do you carry an airwave radio, don't you, as a station manager?
Yeah.
Was it possible that in fact you sent this message over your airwave radio?
No, I sent this message over my phone.
Right.
There should be a phone log.
Right.
In my evidence there somewhere, which should reflect the time of the phone call.
That mobile that you used for that call, do you remember, was it the same mobile that you used to speak to the command unit, I'm sorry,
yes.
during the course of the night?
Answer yes.
Right. And just going back to your statement, at the bottom of page 3, you say, in the penultimate paragraph, I made my way to the control centre on blue lights in my own vehicle. I was no more than 1 mile into the journey when I heard over the airwave radio, make pumps 25.
Yeah, I was just, when I said I was into about a mile into the journey, I mean, that was just a guesstimate.
Sure. Now, they have the timestamp for make pumps 25 at 01, 31 and 30 seconds. I don't need to show you that in the log. So that's what it was at that time. Would that be about right in
Yes.
terms of your departure time and the time you got
Yes.
that message?
Yeah.
Right. Then you go on to say, at that time I recall thinking that things had gone badly wrong somehow, given the time frame, the number of pumps, and the fact that this was a fire inside a flat.
That's correct.
You say you thought things had gone badly wrong somehow. Can you just expand on that? What do you mean? What were your thoughts at the time?
I mean, normally with regard to high-rise and fires in flats, they're normally confined to the compartment. On rare occasions, they do break out through windows and spread vertically. Sometimes to the flat above, sometimes the flat above. Very rarely do they go past that. Again, listening to the make-ups without no informative, you're trying to picture what's actually developing at that incident, and for that amount of resources to be sent to a high-rise fire, the incident was obviously developing very, very rapidly.
Right. And you're able to communicate by your mobile phone. You've also got an airwave radio. Were you able at that time to communicate with the incident commander if you'd wanted to?
Not whilst en route, no.
Right.
One, because I'm driving.
Yeah.
And two, officers of the day would not directly liaise with the incident commander on the fire ground.
Okay. Did you know who the incident commander was at that stage while you were driving in?
No, I didn't.
Okay. If you'd wanted to know, could you have asked anybody?
When I arrived at control, I could have found out who the incident commander was.
Right. Okay. We'll come to that in a moment. In fact, that is where we get to. Mr. Chairman, that probably is a convenient moment for a break. Yes, it's just before 11:15.
Yes, all right. Well, we'll break now and come back at 11:30. Now, Mr. Oliff, we're going to have a break. I have to ask you, please, not to talk about your evidence or anything related to it during the break. All right. And if you go with the usher now, we'll start again at 11:30.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good. 11:30, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can have the witness back, please.
Yes, he's
Thank
on
you.
his way. Right, Mr. Oliff, you ready to keep going?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Oliff, thank you for coming back to us. At the foot of page 3 of your witness statement, if I can just ask you to look at that, you say, it took me about 20 to 25 minutes to arrive at Stratford mobilising control. I just want to get an idea of the timing. You were paged at 1:25, and we've got you en route at the time when you heard over the airwave radio that pumps had been made 25, and that's 01:31:30.
Yep.
On that basis, 20 to 25 minutes, that would put you arriving at the control room at about 10 to 1, 10 to 2 or 5 to 2.
Around about that time, yeah.
Round about that time.
That is a guesstimate as well.
Yes.
But it is around about that time.
Okay. And you don't recall any more precisely, do you, what
No.
time you arrived?
No.
And when you arrived, you say on page 4, at the very top, I asked the OOW, that's Officer of the Watch, what I was needed to do. I think you can't remember who the OOW was, is that right?
I can picture her face, but I can't remember her name.
Joe Smith?
No, Joe Smith was the Senior Operations Manager.
So, right. Okay. Well, we may have to explore that some other way. And you say that you were advised that the incident had recently been moved to a make pumps 30 and was asked to try and contact DAC Lee Drawbridge. Now, do you know that this was never a 30 pump fire? It went from 25 to 40.
I wasn't aware of that, no. I mean, I've just stating what I remember at the time.
Right. Do you know, can you remember who advised you that the incident had been made up above 25 pumps?
I remember going into the control room, speaking to the officer of the watch, and again offering my assistance and what was required of me, what they wanted me to do. The officer of the watch asked if I could try to contact Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lee Drawbridge because he was on our recall. And I said I would do that, so I went into one of the back offices, logged on to the computer system, got his phone number and tried to call him.
Right. Now, but you think that that conversation happened with the officer of the watch after the pumps had been upgraded or made up beyond 25 to a new and higher figure?
Yeah.
Okay. If I can just ask you to look at the short incident log, which is tab 23 of our documents bundle, and go to page 21. At 020341, we have, somewhat unhelpfully, but we have make up IUP G271 make pumps 25. Now, in fact, as I said before, pumps 25 had been made at 01:31.
Yeah, on the incident log, sometimes the make-up bits get repeated further down, even though it was a lot earlier. Sometimes they get repeated on the incident logs.
Right. Okay. So if I ask you then just to look at another document, which is tab 7 of our documents bundle, which is LFB document number 3, and turn to page 2 in that. Just halfway down the page we have this is an LFB record, we have at 020409 we have message from incident CU8, make pumps 40. Now, assuming that that's a correct time mark for that makeup, does that help you put a time on the conversation you had with the officer of the watch when you asked her what was needed?
It's around about that time. I mean, by the time I'd actually arrived at control, there's security gates to get in, there's security doors to go through. By the time you actually get up into the control room itself, and say it was a very, very busy control room. The officer of the watch was again very, very busy. So by the time I'd introduced myself and asked what I could do, it's probably on the same sort of lines. I may have misheard. There's a possibility that I misheard from 30 to 40.
Right. Did you ask who the incident commander was?
Not at that time, no. At the time, I could see that they was being I wouldn't say overwhelmed, but they was extremely busy, right. And what I could do to assist them. And so part of that was I was asked if I could try to recall Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lee Drawbridge.
But Lee Drawbridge wasn't on the fireground, was he?
No, he was what we call as on recall duty, I believe, which is basically you're off duty unless a major incident occurs, and then you can be contacted and recalled to carry out specific roles.
Why was it more important to get hold of Lee Drawbridge and not to try to speak to the incident commander, whoever it was?
That's not part of my role as officer today. I wouldn't speak to the incident commander.
And you made an attempt, I think, to get hold of Lee Drawbridge. In fact, no fewer than 9 attempts to get hold of him.
That's correct, yeah.
And they all failed, you say?
Yeah, just went through to answer phone.
Is that normal? To have 9 failed attempts? Like
no, I just carried on trying, one after the other. There was no answer, so I didn't know where, what his location was. I thought after that time he's not going to answer his phone, so I'll then go on and carry out other duties. Right.
Mm. And I think, cutting a long story short, you went back to the OAW, said you couldn't get hold of Lee Drawbridge.
Yep.
And she said, "Well, try Danny Egan, officer
no,
of number 2.
No, because of the situation that was going on in the control room and how busy it was, as officer of the day, I thought that it would probably be prudent to get an additional station manager in there to assist with other duties that need to be carried out. So I said to the officer of the watch, can we get OD2 paged, and so that we've got some further assistance in the control room. And OD2 for that night was Station Manager Danny Egan.
And as you say, on page 4 of your statement, a third of the way down, you were informed that SM Egan had been mobilised to the incident. Did you speak to Station Manager Egan at that point?
I didn't know. No, the officer, one of the control operators said that Mr. Egan had already been mobilised to the incident. I then asked if Station Manager Paul McClenachan had whether he'd been mobilised to the incident. They said no, he hadn't. So, knowing that Paul McClenachan camps out in Dagenham, which is relatively close to Stratford, I asked if Paul McClenachan could be paged and asked to attend the control centre.
I see. Okay. Now, did you know that Station Manager McClenachan was actually an FSG and a rescue specialist?
He has different tags. He's also at that particular time, an interagency liaison officer, which we call as an ILO, which is also would have been an asset because he can then liaise with other agencies such as the police and the ambulance service.
Did you know that at about that time, the fire at Grenfell Tower had been declared a major incident?
I hadn't, no.
You didn't, okay. And the time for that is 02:06:38, according to the short incident log. You don't have a recollection of that?
At that time, I was in the command room. I didn't have, I didn't have access to a main scheme radio. I wasn't listening to a main scheme radio. I was liaising with the officer to watch at that particular time.
You say just halfway down, page 4 of your statement, the head table of the control room was very busy with information coming into them. Can I just get a picture of what that means in terms of layout, first of all? The head table of the control room, where is that situated in relation to...
So if you want to take this room as an example, so you'd have a head table, which is here, you'd have a screen behind it, and then control operators' desks are either side of that.
Right.
At the head desk, you have the officer. You normally have two officer to watches and other staff there.
Who normally sits at the head table?
That's normally the officer to watches. So you normally have two officer to watches on duty at any one time.
Right.
And then you have another control operator there.
And you mentioned a screen behind the head
it's normally
table.
a television screen, which is the one which, as I referred to, that wasn't on.
Right. And what about the Heli-Tele-Link television?
No, there was nothing there that night.
And the head table, does that have telephones on it?
Yeah, it's got telephones, computer screens. There's a intercom, which that particular night was linked to the police helicopter.
And what telephone sets does it have?
Desk telephone set, plus the critical information line telephone.
Is that the red one?
That's the red one, yeah.
Right. And who has charge of the red telephone?
That normally comes, the critical line telephone normally comes from the command units. So if there's risk critical or life risk critical information, the command units have a telephone number direct to that particular phone within the control room.
And what about lines used or usable by BT or buddy control rooms such as Essex or North West? Would that come through on the red phone or other phones?
That would probably come through on other phones. Again, not being a control operator, I wouldn't know which phones they would use for that, whether they just come through on a direct line to our control staff.
Okay. Now, you say the head table was very busy with information coming into them. Where was that information coming from?
That was coming from all directions. That was coming from the actual call operators themselves with regards to fire survival guidance. It was coming from the police helicopter was on the interlink. There was like a tannoy microphone with a speaker. There's information coming in from that.
Right.
Very, very busy.
And in terms of the control room operators communicating or sending information to the head table, how do they do that?
There was control operators coming up to the head, up to the desk, and speaking to the officer to watch and passing bits of paper backwards and forwards with information on.
Do you remember a radio operator in the control room?
All the control operators are radio operators.
Right. We've heard quite a lot of evidence last week about Sharon Darby, who was, we were told, the radio operator on the night in the control room all night. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that now.
Do you remember anybody occupying the role of radio operator?
No, I wouldn't be able to say who it was that night.
Right. Okay. We'll come back to that topic shortly. But just continuing with your statement, you then in the next sentence say, "I was asked to take the information from the police helicopter. During this event, I spoke with the police helicopter twice." First of all, who asked you to take information from the police helicopter?
And that was the officer to watch.
And you say, "I spoke with the police helicopter twice." How did you do that? How did you get hold of them?
On the head desk, there's a tannoy system. There's a press button on the tannoy, and you speak into the microphone, and there was a speaker on the head desk. When they transmitted, it came out on the speaker on the desk.
Right. And you go on to say, "The first time I spoke with them, I was receiving information from them about the fire and where the fire was spreading." Just pausing there, how soon after arrival in the control room did you start to have, or did you start to receive information from the police helicopter?
So from my memory, and again there are a few blank spots. On arriving, following the phone conversations or trying to phone the Deputy Assistant Commissioner, I went back into the room. I then requested additional station manager be mobilised to control, and then that was my first instance of speaking to the police helicopter. I was asked to speak to them and take information from them.
How did you get hold of them? Did you have a number to ring or a radio? to the police helicopter?
No, as I've said, it's done by an it's a tannoy system. There's a tannoy microphone that was on the desk, and it was basically they was calling us up. I then pressed the button, spoke to the police helicopter, came through. It was almost like a radio system.
I see. Okay, so there's a dedicated radio line to the police helicopter, is there? I see. And does that utilise the normal channels we've been hearing about? Channel 1, Channel 4?
No, this is a separate. This would be a separate channel direct from the police helicopter to the control room.
Okay, so this doesn't use it like the main scheme link?
No.
What about FLONOPS? Doesn't use
FLONOPS is our main scheme radio channels that we have.
Okay. And you say you're receiving information from them about the fire and where the fire was spreading. What were they telling you?
The first time that I spoke to them, they were saying that it was spreading up. Again, it's a little bit vague that the fire was spreading quite rapidly up the east side of the building. It reached a certain. I can't remember what floor it particularly reached. I acknowledged that I'd received that information, and then I asked, I think it was the officer to watch, to get that information passed via the airway radio to the command unit at the incident. Right.
You say spreading quite rapidly up the east side of the building. Did they say anything about any other facade, any other?
Not that I remember of that. Not that I remember at that time. They gave me information about a fire spread up the building and where it was going. I took that information and then passed that, say, to one of the call operators to pass to the incident ground via the command unit.
What would that mean to you? The fact that the fire was spreading rapidly up the east face?
That information would be useful to the officers and the firefighters on the incident ground to know that they've got that the fire is still spreading. It's still a developing fire.
Right. So you passed that information to the incident ground via the command unit?
I asked the control operator to get that information passed to the incident ground. Yes.
Right. Let's break that up a little bit. First of all, passing that to the command unit. Do you remember which command unit it was at that stage?
I believe there was 2 command units on site. There was Charlie Uniform 8 and Charlie Uniform 7.
Do you remember which it was?
Sorry?
Do you remember which it was?
I don't know which one it went to. I didn't get from my memory. I passed it to pass it over to the call operator to pass it via the airway radio. I know that Charlie Uniform 7 was responsible for doing the fire survival guidance information. So I can only speculate that it went to Charlie Uniform 8.
Right. Just pursuing that a bit. You say that you asked the call operator to pass it via the airwave radio.
Yeah, I passed that information to the officer to watch.
Who's the call operator?
I passed that information. I gave the information to the officer to watch,
right,
and asked that if they could pass that information via the airwave radio. So the officer to watch would have then given that information to the radio operator.
Right. And did you see or hear that information being passed over the airwave radio?
I didn't know.
And did you then also pass that information to the other managers in the control room or the control room operators?
At that time, I was the only officer at that particular time. From what I remember, I'm not sure whether they'd just arrived. I was the only senior officer that was in the control room at that time.
To your knowledge, was there any direct link between the police helicopter and the command unit?
I can't say. I don't know.
Would there normally be?
There is a facility for. There's a heli-tele downlink and communications that way, but I can't say whether that was up and running at that time.
Do you know why the control room would be being used as a middleman, a link in the communication chain between the helicopter and the command unit?
If I can only again speculate is that system wasn't set up, and that was their only direct link was via our control room.
Right. Did you seek to find out why the control room was being used as a link in a communication chain in that way?
No, I didn't.
The second occasion, looking at your statement, is where that's the police helicopter, just look at it, were informing me that a flat on the 8th floor appeared to have sheets tied together being lowered out of the window and the occupants trying to climb out of the window to safety. I was informing the OOW of this information, and in turn the OOW asked me to relay this incident to incident control on the ground. How long after arriving in the control room did you get that information from the police helicopter?
That after the first contact with police helicopter, it was a very short time after that.
Right.
I was literally went away. I can't remember where I went, but I came back within a couple of minutes, and then the police helicopter was calling up again. So again, I contacted the police helicopter, and that information was passed to me.
Okay. And you say the OOW asked me to relay this to the incident control on the ground. Did you do that?
I can't remember at this time. If the officer of the watch had asked me to do it, I would have done it, probably by my mobile phone.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll come to the means with which you communicated with command units shortly. You think by your mobile phone, so not by radio?
That's correct.
Right. Do you remember whether, in relation to that specific information, you recorded it anywhere?
No. As I say, at that particular time, it was a very, very busy time in the control room, and looking and taking time stamping everything that we was doing just wasn't viable.
Now, you then go on to say that DAC Fenton arrived at the control and set up the Brigade Coordination Centre, BCC. How soon after your arrival do you remember DAC Fenton arriving?
It's got to be within sort of like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. And you then say, I was instructed by DAC Fenton to take responsibility for the control of the fire survival guidance calls. Did he give you that instruction as soon as he arrived, or?
Not directly as soon as he arrived. I think he came in, he updated himself on the situational awareness. He came over to me, he said, we're going to be setting up the BCC, and he asked me to take responsibility for the fire survival guidance calls. He instructed me to use 2 whiteboards that were available in the control room to use as a recording device for the fire survival guidance calls.
The 2 whiteboards, you say, to use the recording device?
Yeah, use it. Yeah, it's any information that I got was to be recorded onto the whiteboards.
Right. Okay. Now, just pausing there. Before you arrived, do you know who was in charge of the fire survival guidance system?
That would have been the control room would have been in charge of that.
Yeah, do you remember who?
No.
Was it the officer of the watch or somebody else?
The officer of the watch would have had an overview of it, but
Right.
again, I couldn't say who had specifically taken control of it and was dealing with it all.
And do you know who was in charge of passing information from the control room to the incident ground prior to your arrival?
So normal procedures and protocols would be that fire survival guidance calls would be communicated over the airways from control to either a command unit or an incident command pump at the incident.
Yes, and prior to your arrival, do you know, or did you find out, who was communicating
No, I didn't know that
over
at
the
time.
airwaves to the incident ground?
No, I didn't know that at the time.
Okay. When you arrived, did you take any kind of handover from the person who'd been doing FSG?
No.
When DAC Fenton instructed you to take over the FSG, did you take any kind of handover from the person who'd been doing it?
No.
Do you know why?
Again, it was just so busy in there. Everybody was working flat out, and I was just instructed to take control of fire survival guidance. My role would be, I was given a brief that my role would be to collate fire survival guidance information from the control operators and then pass that to the incident ground.
Okay. And when you took over that role, did you seek to learn what was happening on the incident ground to resolve each FSG call?
At that particular time, the amount of fire survival guidance information that calls that were coming in, I didn't have time to ask them questions. It was literally a case of one fire survival guidance call coming in after the other, and being on the telephone, literally passing information
Right.
constantly for a number of hours to the command unit.
Okay. And at the point at which you took over responsibility for handling the FSG calls in the way that you were, did you take any steps to find out about the building, its layout, its construction, or anything like that?
Again, with the amount of information that I was receiving from the call operators, I only had time to concentrate on the information that I was passing over. That particular information for me probably wouldn't have been pertinent to what I was actually doing.
Okay.
My role was to send risk critical life people who had risk or lives were in danger to the command unit, so that actions could be taken on the fire ground.
Right. And in doing that exercise, were you aware of any contingency plans, fallback plans for evacuation, total or partial, for Grenfell Tower?
Not at that time, not when I initially started, no.
Did there come a time when you did become aware of such plans?
And such plans for,
Total or partial evacuation?
are you saying like pre-planned evacuation of the building?
Yes.
No, I wasn't aware of any of that.
Okay. And did the control room have available to it, in some form, the history of the building, the type of building materials used in it, escape
No, not
routes,
that I'm aware of.
cladding, things like that?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Right. Do you think... No, okay. Did you know who the senior fire safety officer was on duty that night?
We don't have one. Normally on each rota there's normally a number of station officers. Again, we're going back to the tags, who would have a tag as a senior fire safety officer. I'm aware that Station Manager Danny Egan has a senior fire safety officer tag, and when I was made aware that he'd been mobilised to that incident, knowing that it was in northwest London, that was probably one of the reasons why he'd been mobilised to it as a senior. But I wasn't sure that he had. Again, it's just making assumptions.
Okay. And just moving on then with your statement, at the bottom of page 4, you say, after discussing the tasking that DAC Fenton gave you, you say, I utilised 2 whiteboards for this task and used them to record and chart all the information received into the control room, and then you produce them. Let's just have those open in front of us. I don't know whether we're able to do a split screen, Mr. Documents Director, and have them there. It's JA04 and JA05. It would be very useful to have them both on the screen at the same time if we can, and if we can't, we can't. But I just want to identify these to start with. We can. That's wonderful. Thank you. So these are JA04 and JA05. Could you, first of all, just help us identify which one was where? Which one was to the left of the right?
So the left-hand board was the first board which I started, where it says flat 182.
Right.
21st floor. That was the first fire survival guidance information that I passed over to the command unit.
Okay. And were these up, as it were, blank at the same time?
Yeah. When they was pointed out to me by DAC Fenton, they were just clear whiteboards.
Okay. And did you fill them out simultaneously, or one after the other?
No, just one after the other. So the one on the left was completed first, and then went over to the one on the right-hand side.
Okay. And as further information came in, did you update?
Yeah,
each one?
Again, because of the amount of information that I was receiving. So if you have a look at, I think it's the third entry down, I think it's got 133. They've got information. So if you come down a little bit to the left-hand side, if you go to the left,
yes.
So 133 is showing a little arrow to the side saying rescued, and then 201. If you go to the right hand, the very far right hand side where there's a little line, it says now unconscious.
Yes. Is that right? I see. In terms of handwriting, can you just identify whose handwriting is that on the first one, JA04?
That's mine.
That's your hand. All of it?
All of that is mine, yeah.
Okay. And there's a difference between the red pen, the green pen, and the black pen. Why is that?
I don't know. That is all my writing.
Okay. And then looking at the one next door to it, JA05. Again, is that your handwriting?
Yes.
All of it?
Yes.
What about where it says 193, 23rd, 10 people?
Yes.
You think that's your handwriting?
That's my handwriting, yeah.
Can you account for why you suddenly switched to green?
I know I was having trouble with one of the pens. A couple of the pens started running out, and so...
Joe Smith gave evidence... Sorry.
And a couple of times, looking back at my calling, at the time when I gave my statement, I thought that I was constantly on the phone to the command unit, but when I looked at it, there was short breaks in between, so there may have been times where I'd liaised with call operators where they've given me more information, or I've received information back and then gone and spoke to the call operators or the officer of the watch, and then come back to the board. I'd put the pen down and then picked a different pen up to write the information on the board.
Okay. Joe Smith gave evidence last week that in the entry for 193 in green, 10 people was her. Do you remember whether that might be so?
No, I don't. No.
Okay. Who else?
As far as I'm aware, I was the only person who was writing on those boards.
Okay. Now you say at the bottom of page 4 of your statement that would include the flat number, floor number, number of occupants, and conditions.
Yeah.
When you look at the second whiteboard, you see that once you get to the fourth entry down, 83 on the 11th, you don't get number of occupants. And similarly, 123 on the 15th, you don't get the number of occupants. And indeed, 113 on the 14th.
On the sorry to interrupt, but on the information I was just putting, if there was no number of occupants in there, then I hadn't received that information.
Would it not be vitally important to obtain the information as to the number of occupants?
At the time of completing these boards, I wasn't in direct contact with the call operators. I was being given small pieces of paper with the information on. It didn't have the call operator's name or identification who had taken the call. So it would have been very, very difficult for me and time consuming to go back to the call operator to try and gather that type of information. And because this information was coming in constantly from either the call operators or I was receiving information back from the command unit, it would have been too time consuming, and to get the information to the command unit to say that these people were trapped was more important than finding out how many people was in there, so that we got crews up there to deal with the fire survival guidance calls.
Okay. Now, in terms of the source of information on these boards, where were you getting this information from?
So the calls were coming into the call operators. The call operators were then approaching me. I was given small pieces of paper with the flat number, what floor it was on, and information regarding the people inside the property, right, and or conditions inside that premises. Okay.
Now, let's just take this a bit more slowly. The call operator is on the phone to the caller.
Yes.
And gets... Let's take, for example, the first entry on the first page. This is the very first one you write down. Left-hand board, flat 182, 21st floor, 3 children, 2 adults, leave, I think it says. Now,
yeah,
that information you wrote there, as you said, using the green pen.
Yeah.
You say that it comes from the control room operators. And what do they do? They're on the phone. While they're on the call, are they writing?
I can only assume. I was a call operator came up to me. Different people come up to me, give me pieces of information on little squares of paper or little pieces of paper with the flat number, the floor number, and some additional information, and then I passed that directly to the command unit, and then I recorded it up on the board.
In terms of the people coming to you, were you at the head table?
No, I was in the corner of the control room.
In the corner of the control room?
Yeah, so the head table was here, and I was in the corner on the far right-hand side. The head table was, there was just too many people there. There was too much information going backwards and forwards. You had the senior operations manager, two officer of the watches, Dak Fenson was there. So to be able to communicate that clearly and concisely to the command unit, I had two whiteboards over in the far corner of the control room that was up on the wall. Control operator staff knew that I was over there, so any fire survival guidance information came over to me, it was passed to me, I passed it to command unit and recorded it up on the boards.
Now, just picking apart just this little bit of detail, the control. Who were the individuals, do you remember, who were bringing you the pieces of paper?
As far as I'm aware, they're control operators.
So had they finished their calls when they brought you the pieces of paper, or were they able to continue the calls while bringing you the pieces of paper?
They wouldn't have been on the calls. But again, with our fire survival guidance policy, because of the amount of calls they come in, it does state that they can terminate those calls if the situation changes. If it stays the same and they need to take further calls, then they can go on to other calls. I'm not sure. I can't say whether the persons who kept coming up to me were runners, but as far as I'm aware, they was control operator staff.
Right. Do you think they might have been runners?
No. Control don't have runners. So I would say they was control operator staff.
Does that mean that they would have had to have finished their calls before they were able to leave their desks with the pieces of paper and bring them to you at the whiteboard?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
But from what you were seeing and experiencing on the night, was that the position?
I had a lot of different people come up to me with information on bits of paper,
right,
with fire survival guidance information that was passed to me, and then I passed that information on.
If a control room operator, in the course of an ongoing call to a caller, told them that they were informing the crews now of the situation, I'm sending a message to the crews, how would they do that while still being on the call? Do you know?
I can't answer that question because, as I say, I'm not the call operator. All I can tell you is what I did on the night is, as I say, I was in the corner of the room with the two whiteboards, and I was receiving information from control operator staff with the fire survival guidance information. I can't say directly whether they was or was not directly on fire survival guidance calls.
Right. And can you help? Maybe you can't, but can you help with any communications between control room operators and the radio operator?
No, it's not part of my role.
Did you know that the radio operator... Okay, maybe to try something slightly different. Could you please go to the short incident log and go to, for example, page 21. I'm going to show you a message which was sent at a time when you were in the control room on the basis of what you've told us so far. At the foot of the page, you can see at 020908, a service request created, RT4 to G271, firing corridor, floor 12, caller trapped, flat 95, and then that service request is completed at 021021, just a minute and a half or so later. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Now, this is from the short incident log. Can you help us answer this question? How did the person, SAD, complete that service request and then log it in that way?
I can't answer that question.
Joe Smith told us that this kind of process was where a control room operator on the phone sent a message on the computer to the radio operator, and then the radio operator contacted the relevant command pump.
Yep.
With the message. That was the gist of her.
That would be, as I say, that looks like that's gone over the airwave radio to the incident command pump. But I wasn't aware of that message had gone.
No, not maybe in relation to that message, but were you aware then generally that while you were passing messages from your whiteboard to the command unit, someone else in the control room was passing the same, similar or different messages over the radio?
It's quite possible.
It's possible. Okay. Did you know that?
At the time, no.
Right.
And so, and normal protocols for fire survival guidance is that they would be passed via the airwave radio. But again, as this was an unprecedented incident, the amount of fire survival guidance information that was coming in, it was passed over to me to pass the information to the command unit.
Okay. We're going to get to that in due course. A little bit more of a run-up, though. Before you started the whiteboard system, what system was in place, do you know, in the control room for recording the kind of information that needed to be passed to the incident ground?
So if normal procedures, again, at the time of the incident, I wasn't aware that any was in place, but normal procedures for fire survival guidance is that the call operator will contact the incident command pump or the command unit. They would then transfer that information. The radio operator on the incident command pump or the command unit would then record that information on what's called a control of information form. It's in quadruple fat form. One bit is kept on the incident command bit, and then the other three are passed out around the incident ground. Normally one goes to the fire survival guidance coordinator, one goes to the bridgehead where the search sector commander is, so that they're aware that they've got fire survival guidance and they know where to direct crews to.
Right. And just so we're absolutely clear about this, this is contained in Policy 790, tab 5 of the Policies Bundle, Appendix number 2, Control Information Form on page 8. Can I just ask you just to see that, to verify that we're talking about the same thing? Is that what you are referring to?
That's correct, yeah.
And that's used in the command unit?
That's in the command unit or the incident command pump to take initial fire survival guidance information.
Okay. And you say one bit is kept on the incident command unit?
Yeah, so you'll see in the top left-hand corner where it says white copy ICP.
Yes.
ICP stands for incident command pump or vehicle.
And you say, I think, that in your last answer, that one goes to the fire survival guidance coordinator,
yeah,
and one goes to the bridgehead. Now, who would be the survival guidance coordinator to whom one copy of this would go on the incident ground?
Whenever we have a fire survival guidance incident, a station manager would have been mobilised to that incident, and he would be given the role as fire survival guidance coordinator, so that when he arrived at the incident, we would also mobilise a separate command unit to deal with all the fire survival guidance information, and he would coordinate all the information with regards to fire survival guidance between the command unit, the control unit, and the firefighters or the control at the bridgehead. Okay.
And from the time you started dealing with the FSG calls, who was the fire survival guidance coordinator? Do you remember?
I don't know. The information, I was speaking directly to the command unit staff. So, again, you would utilise the command unit staff to gather information or take information from the command unit, and then as the fire survival, then you would then pass that information on to the search coordinator.
Okay. And you also said, now a number of answers ago, that one of these copies would also go to the bridgehead. Is that right? Well,
yeah. I mean, the bridgehead is the focal point from where the operations will be taking place with regards to high-rise premises, and at that you'd have a fire sector commander, and you normally have a search sector commander as well. So that if you get that information, you can liaise with the sector commander, so that resources can be deployed to rescue the people in that fire survival guidance information.
So in the normal course of things, you would expect the A copy, yellow, blue or green, to go to the bridgehead?
Yes.
From the command unit?
Yes.
And how would that piece of paper be taken from the command unit to the bridgehead?
Well, that information can be passed via handheld radios from the FSG to the search coordinator. At the bridgehead, they may have, or they should have, what's called as a FRIB, a forward information recording board. So that information can then, once the information has been transferred via handheld radio, you'd have a record on the forward information board to say where the fire survival guidance calls or information is, how many people, etc. So that, again, resources can then be deployed to that area, and then a physical copy could then be passed via runner to the bridgehead.
So would you normally then have a dual system of FSG information coming from the command unit or incident or ICP, one by piece of paper through a runner and the other by
the initial
by
information
radio.
would have been passed via handheld radio and then backed up with a hard copy, so that any information that so that no information is actually missed.
I see. So that I'm absolutely clear, the normal method of communication between the command unit and the bridgehead in relation to an FSG call is by handheld radio. That's fireground radio, is it?
It's fireground radio, yeah.
Okay.
That's the quickest and most expedient way of transferring information on the fireground.
Okay.
Whether that happened or not, because again, I shouldn't speculate, but again, I can only imagine that the handheld radios were extremely busy that night.
Yeah.
So in them situations, other channels can be used, but if that is the case, then it may have been quicker to pass the fire survival guidance information via the form.
Right. So, but just in terms of normal operations, handheld radio is the primary method of communication.
Yeah.
Is that right? And then the Appendix 2 CIF control form copy is the, as it were, backup.
Well, it's a backup, and it's a belt and braces.
Yes, exactly. Belt and braces is a good expression. All right. Is the control information form ever used in the control room, brigade control room?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Right. Excuse me. I think we were on the system in place in the control room before you instituted the whiteboard system for recording FSG details. We may have deviated a little from that topic. Can you just going back to that, can you just help me answer that question? What was the system in place before you started the whiteboard system for recording FSG information?
So standard procedure for fire survival guidance information is to pass the information by the airwave radio to the incident command vehicle.
So would it be recorded at all in the control room, or would it just go straight from the CRO?
That would have been recorded on the, I believe that would have been recorded on the incident log. You've got like whenever the information is passed via the handheld radio, it's normally recorded in the incident log. Where you showed them ones before, and it's on the incident log, that shows that it's been passed via our airwave radio.
Right. Okay. Let's just perhaps take an earlier example then, before you got involved. If you go back to the short incident log at page 18, again, this is an example, as I don't want people to think that I'm asking you all the questions I have about the specific call, but at 1:31:38, there is a service request, PD, which we now know as Pete Duddy, creates a service request, RT4 to G271, further call to say fire on 20th floor, also people trapped. Now we don't know the flat number or the numbers of people, but that message going to the incident ground, you say, do you, that would have gone directly from the control room operator who was managing the call straight to the incident ground?
That would have gone via the radio operator, yeah.
Okay. You say via the radio operator. Is that a different person in the control room from the person handling the call?
Again, because I'm the operational side, I'm not sure of the control operator's procedure for passing that information to the radio operator.
Right. So you can't help me with whether there was, as I say, a parallel or a different system that you think it looks done by radio.
I can only say what I can see. It looks like that there was a number of bits of information that was passed via the airwave radio to Gulf 271 with regards to further information that was coming in with regards to calls to fires within the building.
Right. And what was anything insufficient about that system of using the airwave radio direct from the CRO?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. Well, when you check, let me try it a different way. When DAC Fenton instructed you to start using the whiteboard system to record the information, was there anything wrong with the system that was being used before?
The airwave radio is one channel, and there was a lot of radio traffic going backwards and forwards from the incident. It would have tied up a lot of airwave radio time, giving all that information over to the command unit via the airwave radio.
Okay. Now, you then start communicating the information on your whiteboard to the incident ground. In the early stages of that, what method of communication did you use?
As soon as I started with the whiteboards, I was using my Brigade mobile phone.
Did you ever use your airwave radio to communicate with the incident ground? You didn't. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, because that's not my role as officer today, is not to have direct contact with the fire ground via the airwave radio.
And who did you ring?
Charlie Uniform 7.
7?
Yeah.
Not 8?
Not I'm aware now. I'm sure it was Charlie Uniform 7.
Right. So
I could be wrong, because I know there was 2 command units there, and I was definitely speaking to one and the other.
And which individual was it on the CU that you were speaking to?
It would have been one of the command operator staff. I didn't have his name.
Okay. Does the name Daniel Merrick mean anything to you?
No. No. Again, at the time of the incident, formalities of taking people's names just didn't happen.
Okay. So let's look at your phone records, if we can. These are exhibited at JAO 7, which is MET 000169110. Let's see if we can get a detailed picture. First of all, let's just see if we can time the calls. We've got them on this. Right, we need to get to the third page of that. Sorry. Mr. Documents Director, if we can just put up the third page there, and then if we can highlight those that are highlighted in yellow towards the bottom of the page. I can just be clear about these. These are all of them. There is a second, or I should say last page of this bill, but it doesn't have any relevant calls on it. Now, we've got a time for the first of the relevant calls at 0206. And we've redacted part of the number, but we can see, other than the partially redacted number, the duration of the call and the happy fact that it doesn't cost you anything. Was that the first call, do you think you made? Around about that time, 0206?
Sorry, could you just scroll up a little bit? Sorry. No, there's one at...
You've got the last...
Yeah, no, I'm just looking because the first previous, I think it's the first previous 9 would have been the phone calls to Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lee Drawbridge, and then from there I went on to the command unit.
That's very helpful.
Also, as well, if you look at the 0125, that would have been the call once I'd been paged to control.
Right. Okay. Well, we've redacted those out of I suppose, an abundance of caution. But I can tell you that the calls from 0157 to 0202 are to the same. There are 9 of them, and they are to the same number.
Yeah, that would have been the Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lee Drawbridge.
Right. And then there's a call at 0127 to an 0203 number.
Yeah, as I say, I think the initial call that I made to control when I was paged was 0125.
Yeah.
But I think it was extremely busy. So
Okay.
by the time I'd tried again, it was 0127.
Yeah.
By the time they answered, and I'd booked status 2.
Right. And when you did your statement for the police, presumably you had the document in front of you.
Not at the time, no.
You didn't?
Not at the time. The police requested the records after I'd given the statement.
Okay. And when having seen the records, did they confirm what you said in your
Yes,
statement?
yeah.
Okay. Now looking then at the time mark of 0206 for 15 minutes and 58 seconds, would that be the first call to the command, the relevant command unit?
Yes, and again, that could have been the information. Again, that could have been the initial information regarding the information from the police helicopter.
Okay. Now, can I just ask you to go back to the short incident log and look at an...
Are we coming back to this document?
We are, very much so, yes. So we're going to flip around a bit. But
No, that's all right.
can I just take you to page 22 of the short incident log for the time mark of 02:23:33. And it says there, SAD, we know that to be Sharon Darby, key, CU7, run all FSG calls via CU7.
So that would have been the command unit that I would have been phoning.
Right. Would that mean that prior to 02:23, you weren't speaking to CU7?
No, that would have been. I would have still been speaking to them. That's just that Charlie Uniform 7's just confirmed that they are dealing with all the fire survival guidance calls.
Okay.
They was probably dealing with it before that message went or that message came out.
Right. Okay. Now, but just to be clear, you think that this call at 0206 is the first call to the incident?
Yeah, I can't. Again, I can't actually remember the first call, whether that was the information via the police helicopter or whether that was the initial first fire survival guidance call.
Okay. Okay. Now, it lasts for, as you see, 15 minutes and 58 seconds, which would take you to about 2:21.
I would say, because of the time that I was on the phone, that would have been the fire survival guidance calls.
Yeah. Now, I just want to flip back, I'm afraid, I'm sorry to do this to you, to the short incident log at page 21. And just ask you about the calls we looked at a minute ago. At 0209, you can see 020908, you can see PD, Pete Duddy, making a service request RT4 to G271, fire in corridor, floor 12, caller track flat 195, and then that's completed, as we saw, at 2:10:21. Do you know whether, or do you remember whether, while you were on your mobile to the command unit, other people in the control room were also passing fire survival guidance details to the incident ground via the radio?
I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that. No.
Okay. Would it surprise you to learn that that was happening?
With regards to what was going on in the in the control room, no, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well,
There'll be an overlap time of. There would have probably been an overlap time of information going via the airwave radio to what I was doing.
Did anybody tell you or discuss with you in the control room as you started this fire survival guidance communication with the fireground, to that you should liaise with the radio operator to make sure that you weren't operating a parallel system?
No.
Okay. Now, prior to your arrival, did you know how FSG calls were being passed to the incident ground?
Again, our fire survival guidance policy would normally be that that information would have gone via the airwave radio.
Did you know whether they were being passed to one unit or more than one unit?
Again, going back to our policy, normally when we receive fire survival guidance information, a separate command unit and, say, station manager are mobilised specifically to deal with fire survival guidance information. So that as soon as that command unit is in attendance and is confirmed that they're taking over, then they would receive all the information regarding fire survival guidance.
Okay. Now, in the control debrief notes, which I'm going to show you, these are LFB 00003113. Can we just open those up? If I can show you page 4 of those, please. I should just tell you what this document is to start with. These are notes, handwritten notes, taken by, we think, the chair of a control debrief meeting, Andy Hearn, which took place on the 24th of July 2017.
Sorry, can you just speak up a little bit? I didn't quite catch that.
Yes, these are handwritten notes, we think, taken by the chair of the meeting, Andy Hearn, of a meeting which took place on the 24th of July 2017 to debrief the control room. And you can see the attendees there. I don't think you're present, but present were Debbie Reel, Peter May, Keith Diamond, Joe Smith, Adam, who we know now to be Adam Crinian, Alex Norman, and Adrian, and that's Adrian Fenton, we think. And then if you look at the fourth page of this document, it says, just before halfway down the page, SM Oliff arrives, offers help, opens up line with CU. And I just wanted to ask you about that. When you opened up a line with CU, I think you said you only used your mobile.
Yeah, it's just a communication line.
Right. Was there not a line open to the CU before that?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Do you know before you arrived whether fire survival guidance messages were being passed to the incident control pump or to a CU?
I wasn't given any information regarding that at the time.
Right. And is that because you didn't have a handover from the person who was in charge of passing FSG information to the control?
Sorry, say that again, sorry?
Arrived? Is that because you didn't have a handover?
I can't say whether I had a handover or not. I say the actual control room that night everyone was at full steam. They was at full capacity. Everyone was working very, very hard. Time for normal policies and protocols there wasn't time for a lot of it. It was basically given a job, get on and do it.
And the note also says, just for completeness, I'll show this to you, all FSGs passed this way. Mobile phone, personal mobile, no other way. Now, obviously, you didn't write this, and I'm making an assumption that that's describing what you did, but that looks like it says that all FSGs were passed by you on your mobile and not by any other means. Would that
Yeah.
be consistent with your recollection?
Yes.
Right. On that basis, can I then ask you to look at one or two of these calls? I want you to look, please, first at the short incident log at page 21. And keep your phone records, if they can be kept on the board with a split screen. We can maybe be able to do this by split screen. We succeeded before this morning, so fortune favours the brave, Mr. Documents Director. Brilliant. It can be done. Now, can I then ask you to look at the entry on page 21 at 020555. So we've got well, let's actually try a better one. Let's try 020606, which is an easier one. 020606, we have service request made by HJF, which is Heidi Fox, we discovered. Service request created RT4 to CU8. Further call times 2 adults and 1 child trapped inside flat 82 on floor 11. And that's at 02, as I say, 0206, so that would be just about the same time as you start your call. You see that?
Yep.
Which lasts for 15 minutes and 58 seconds.
Yep.
And now if we look across to the whiteboard, the first whiteboard, if we can just have that up. I daren't ask whether we can do triple split screens. But if you look at the first one,
Yeah.
we've got
Yeah, I might have got that wrong with the first board might have been the one on the right-hand side.
well, I was going to ask you, yes, the first one looks as if
Yeah, first one would have been the right-hand side, sorry.
flat 82, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well that solves that little
Yeah.
question. But you've got the details up there, written in black pen, 82 11th. Bed front door, what is that? Can you help with that? What that
Say that
means?
again, sorry.
It says, is it bed front door?
Outside front door. There's 2 adults, 1 child, 5 was outside front door.
Okay, oh I see. But before that it says bed front door. Or bad front door. Do you know what that says?
Or it might be behind front door. It might have just been a little abbreviation I used, behind front door.
Okay, it's I think probably an unimportant detail. The point I want to ask you about is you've recorded flat 82, 11th floor, and got those details down there. Is that a call that you sent by mobile?
Yes.
Right. And do you know, and you sent it to a command unit, you think?
Yes.
Can you then explain why at the same time we've got the same message being sent?
So if you go back to the call log, we can.
You go back to the call log, yes you can, absolutely. 0206.
So the what I'm seeing there is that the initial call from that coming at 0206 at the time that I was taking over for the fire survival guidance, because that's put through via a computer request to the radio operator, there may have been a delay of that being sent over to the command unit via the airwave radio.
Right.
So it's just an overlap of the control operator staff and myself
Okay.
taking over the fire survival guidance.
Right. And it says RT4 to CU8. And we heard Joe Smith on last week explaining that it was CU8. Does that help you with your recollection of
No, my
which command
recollection.
unit you were talking
My
to?
recollection was I was talking to Charlie Uniform 7,
Right.
which I think had been allocated as the fire survival guidance command unit.
Right. Now then, and just looking at the short incident log from 0224 on page 22, 022411, just running your eye down, from 022411, a third of the way down the page, we've got a number of calls running to 31051, and that's over 3 pages. And I just pick them up. We've got flat 183, I'll abbreviate, and then again at 022532, and then again at 022704, flat 194, flat 94, and then again.
Yeah, it looks like they were still sending information to Charlie Uniform 8.
Right. Okay, that's what I was wondering. But just focusing on flat 94, there's a service request created, Heidi Fox, at 022704 to CU8, and that's then completed 44 seconds later by Sharon Darby, flat 94 on the 12th floor, 2 adults still trapped inside. You see both of those?
Yep.
Now that's still, it just looks like it's just after your first call, but perhaps during your second call, which was only 2 minutes. But I just want to ask you, if you go back to your whiteboard, I'm sorry to ask you to juggle so many documents, but if you go back to your whiteboards, we don't find a record of flat 94 on either board.
I can only say that I never received that information.
But might it be the case, and I don't want you to speculate, but is it possible, which of course invites speculation, let me put it this way, do you recall instances of flats not making it to the whiteboard, but nonetheless being communicated to the...
No, everything that I received via the co-operators or the control staff, I passed to the instrument and recorded straight on the board.
Right. Can you explain why we see a message going from control, Sharon Darby, in relation to flat 94 at that time, which doesn't make it onto your whiteboard?
Because the only explanation I can give is that I never received any information. I never got past the call information informing me of flat 94.
Right. And to be fair to you, there are then instances of other flats which are both the subject of radio messages on the short incident log and do go onto the whiteboard. So, for example, flat 142. If you go to the top of page 23, you can see that at 022931, we have a service request created, RT4 to CU8, flat 142, 17th floor, 5 adults, including 2 elderly persons inside, and then that is a service request completed a couple of minutes later. That's flat 142. If we go to your whiteboard and go to JAO 6, JAO 5, it's a little bit faint, but 2/3 of the way down the whiteboard we can see 142, 17th, 5 adults, and it's not that clear after that. Can you help with that? It says, looks like it says 5 adults, 2 adults. It's hard to know. Can you read that for us?
I think 142 is 5 adults, and then 173 is 2 adults.
Okay.
And then additional information came in that they was in the stairwell.
Right. Okay. So that's a different flat. But 142. Now, what you don't get on the whiteboard, and you do get in the short incident log, is that the information includes 2 elderly persons inside the flat. So when you're recording your FSG calls, are you capturing all the information that the control room operator is gathering from the caller?
I was recording what was passed to me on pieces of paper.
Right. And when you were passed a piece of paper that simply said 5 adults, what assumptions did you make about whether that information was complete?
Well, I wasn't. I was taking it that was the information that they had been given.
Right. Can you also explain how you pass this information over, but at the same time, it seems, the information is also going, with a little bit more detail, to the incident ground by radio, by RT4.
So, can you repeat that?
Can you explain how, at the same time as you're writing up that information and passing it to the command unit by mobile, it looks like from the short incident log that it's also going by radio?
I can't answer that. I can't answer why. Everything that was written up on that board was passed to me on small pieces of paper, and that's what I put up on that board. Any information I got back from the command unit or from the call operators, I recorded on that board. Right.
Okay. And I've just got one more question to which I suspect the answer may be the same. If you go to the short incident log at page 22, there's a call at 022704. Which I think we looked at before, which says, service request, RT4 to CU8, flat 94 on the 12th floor, 2 adults still trapped inside, and then that is completed a minute or two later by, 40 seconds or so later by Sharon Darby. We see yes, I'm sorry, I think I've covered that, actually. Do you remember any discussion about which command pump you should be talking to, whether it should be G271, CU8 or CU7?
All I can remember is I was talking to Charlie Uniform 7.
Right. Do you remember any discussion about prioritisation of calls?
No. That would have been a fireground decision making.
Can I just ask you to look at the short incident log at page the ORR at page 81. At the top of the page, at 150.49, we see that control room operator Adams telephones the CU believed to be CU8, and watch manager Merrick answers the phone. CRO Adams relays the following FSG calls information: flat 133, floor 16, and flat 182, 21st floor. Now, this is before you arrive in the control room.
Yep.
But I just want to show this to you and then ask you a question about it. CU requests an idea of priority from control, who confirm the following. And then you see some detail. And then in the last sentence it says, CU ask if control can prioritise calls based on smoke density going forward. Now, do you remember when you started running the FSG calls in the way we've been discussing, whether anybody told you that control had been asked by the CU to prioritise calls based on smoke density?
No. No, I was given no handover or brief regarding that.
Right. Was there any discussion that you had with anybody in the control room or anybody at the incident ground about the control room prioritising calls based on smoke density?
No.
So far as you were concerned, was there any prioritisation of calls?
As far as I was aware, I was given information regarding fire survival guidance information calls, and then I was passing that over to the command unit. I personally was not prioritising which calls to where. The information that I was passing over, some information was saying that there was fire outside front doors, or persons believed to have gone unconscious. They would have been prioritised on the fire ground.
Right. Okay. Mr. Chairman, we're sort of mid-topic-ish. It may be a convenient moment for a break. I know that Mr. Oliff has been going for a while.
Yes,
so.
we could do. We can probably afford to take the extra 10 minutes, can we, over the adjournment?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Well, we're going to stop now for a moment, Mr. Oliff. We'll carry on at 2 o'clock, and please don't talk to anyone about your evidence over the break, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good. 2 o'clock then, please.